All right, let's get into the story of a man named Edward Oakley. And I'm telling you, his life is one of those stories that really makes you stop and think. It forces you to ask some really tough questions about right and wrong. We're going to follow his journey from this incredibly gifted craftsman to, well, an unwilling accomplice in some pretty terrible things. And finally, to a man who is just desperate for a shot at redemption. It's a powerful lesson in just how messy morality can be.
So these are the dying words of a pirate captain, and man, do they just perfectly set the stage for what we're about to talk about. It's this chilling reminder that the things we create, the things we put out into the world, they can have a life of their own, an impact that goes way beyond what we ever intended.
Okay, so our story kicks off in 17th century London, and our guy, Edward Oakley, he's a young man with what looks like a brilliant future ahead of him. His whole life is tied to these massive, incredible ships that were, the very heart of the British Empire.
See, Oakley wasn't just good at his job. He had this rare, almost magical gift. He could look at a bunch of lines on a piece of paper, a blueprint, and in his mind, he'd see the finished ship, already sailing on the water. It was this deep, natural instinct, and that kind of talent, well, it got him noticed. It earned him the favor of his master and put him on the fast track to success.
But then, just like that, his whole promising career is completely shattered, all because of a lie. A jealous colleague frames him for a fire he didn't start, and the justice system, well, it fails him. Based on nothing but bad testimony, he's condemned. And in a blink of an eye, his entire life takes this dramatic, incredibly unjust turn.
So he's transported to America, and for years, his life is just misery. Brutal, back-breaking work in the tobacco fields of Virginia. But then, his real talent, that gift for shipbuilding, it gets discovered. His owner sees a chance to make a profit, right? So he puts Oakley to work building and fixing boats. And for Oakley, it's a way out of the fields for sure. But what he doesn't know is that this reprieve, it's also putting him on a brand new and very, very dangerous path.
And this is where things get really interesting. A charismatic stranger shows up with an offer that's about to change everything. This is the moment Oakley faces his first real moral test. A choice between what he knows is right and a chance at a real future. This stranger, a Captain Carnaby, says he's a trader, and he asks Oakley to build him a very special kind of ship. He's super specific about it too. It has to be fast, it has to be armed, and, this is key, it has to be built in total secret. He claims it's for competitive trade in the Caribbean, and he needs the speed and the guns for, self-defense. So right here, you can see the huge gap between what Carnaby is saying and what he actually means. Discreet coastal trading? Yeah, that's just a nice way of saying smuggling. And self-defense against pirates? Well, that's code for we're going to be the pirates. This double talk, this deception, it's the very heart of the moral test Oakley is facing.
And then comes the real temptation. Carnaby offers Oakley a personal reward of £50. Now to us, that might not sound like much, but for an indentured servant in the 17th century, that's an absolute fortune. It's more money than he could ever dream of seeing, and it represents a real shot at freedom when his sentence is finally up.
So, this is the story Oakley tells himself to make it all okay. He says, I had done nothing wrong. What Captain Carnaby did with the vessel was his own affair. He basically builds this wall in his mind, right? He separates his craftsmanship from the ship's purpose. He convinces himself he's just the builder. And hey, what happens after it leaves his hands, that's not on him.
Well, it doesn't take long for Oakley to learn the true, devastating price of that compromise. The news that eventually trickles back from the Caribbean is more horrific than he ever could have imagined. And that comfortable distance he tried to create between his work and its consequences, it vanishes completely.
Word gets back that the swift retribution, the ship he built, has been used in a brutal pirate attack on a passenger ship, the Bristol Rose. The very vessel he was so proud of, this masterpiece of design, has become an instrument of pure terror.
15 people were killed in that attack. And what's worse, 4 of them were children. They were cut down by the cannons of the very ship Oakley built. A vessel he specifically designed for speed, a ship that could easily chase down and overtake a fleeing merchant ship. The connection is undeniable.
At this point, Oakley can't hide behind his excuses anymore. The crushing reality of what he's done, his complicity, it all just crashes down on him. His guilt is absolute. He realizes he didn't just build a ship, he forged a weapon and handed it directly to a murderer.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, Carnaby comes back, and he blackmails Oakley, forcing him to build a second identical pirate ship.
See, now Oakley is completely trapped. Carnaby threatens to expose him as a willing partner if he refuses. He's gone from being this kind of unwitting pragmatist to a knowing but totally unwilling accomplice in piracy.
So after the horror of being forced to build that second ship, an unexpected visitor shows up. And this is a chance. A chance for Oakley to use his incredible skills not to create more evil, but to undo the very evil he helped unleash on the world.
It's a Lieutenant Barrett from the Royal Navy. And the Navy, they've realized something pretty crucial. To catch a one-of-a-kind ship designed by Edward Oakley, they need another ship designed by Edward Oakley. So Barrett comes to him with this extraordinary proposition. Build us a third vessel. Build us a pirate hunter.
So Oakley's mission is now to create a ship that can flat-out beat his own designs. He has to turn his intimate knowledge of the swift retribution's every strength and every weakness into a weapon for justice. This isn't just about speed anymore, it's about building something that can fight and win.
And here's how he does it. To beat his own creation, he makes 3 brilliant improvements. First, a wider beam, which makes the ship a much more stable platform for the cannons. Second, more guns, superior firepower, plain and simple. And third, a reinforced hull. This new ship is built to survive a battle, not just to win a race. He's not just building another ship, he's building a direct answer to his past mistakes.
So, with his new ship, the Resolution, Oakley actually joins the hunt. But here's the twist. The closer he gets to what he thinks is justice, the more complicated and morally gray the world starts to look.
They finally confront the swift retribution, and the Resolution wins. Oakley finds himself standing over a dying Captain Carnaby. But in his final moments, Carnaby offers no apology, no remorse. Instead, he just makes this chilling observation about the legacy of what they've created. He tells Oakley that the ships, their ships, will outlive them both, sailing on long after their makers are gone.
And as the hunt goes on, Oakley starts to see that the so-called right side of the law, well, it operates in the shadows too. He sees the Navy paying bribes for information. He hears a captured pirate argue that the legal merchants profiting from the slave trade are no better than he is. He even watches as the pirate ship they capture is just repurposed and put into Navy service. The lines are blurring everywhere.
And this really brings Oakley face to face with an unsettling reality. You look at both sides. They both use violence to get what they want, and they both have their own moral justifications. Piracy leads to anarchy and suffering, sure, but the lawful system he's serving, it's built on its own brutal forms of servitude and slavery. The lines between the good guys and the bad guys are nowhere near as clear as he once thought.
So Oakley's journey doesn't really give us any easy answers, does it? He starts out as a victim, becomes a reluctant accomplice, and ends up as an agent for a system that is itself morally compromised. His story just kind of leaves us hanging with this question. If law and justice aren't always the same thing, how do we choose who to serve? In a world full of imperfect choices, what path would you take?